Okay, so let's start with our motivation. So cultivating our motivation is also done through concept, but this is a favorable or correct use of conception, which is very, very different than the type of conception that triggers our afflictions. So this conception is based on how things are. For example, that everybody wants happiness and nobody wants suffering. That's something that I think everybody agrees is true. Whereas our opinions of this person or that person are ideas about how this activity should or shouldn't be done. All of those are things that are created by our mind that not everybody agrees upon, and that are based on self-grasping, wrong conception, and make afflictions arise in our mind that in turn create destructive karma. So the mere conception that all beings want happiness and no one wants suffering, it's a very simple conception, very simple thought, but it's actually quite profound. Because somehow when we're upset with people, we forget that they want to be happy and not suffer. We forget that they're people with feelings, and we're so locked in our own mind and our own thoughts that other people become quite like concrete statues, We don't really see them as living, functioning, feeling human beings who have the Buddha potential. We just see them as caricatures that our own mind is creating. So that's why it's good to really spend some time pondering how everybody wants happiness and nobody wants suffering. Starting with our friends, moving to strangers, and then of course to people that we don't like. And if we spend the time meditating like this, our way of thinking will definitely change, and our way of feeling about other living beings will also change. But if we merely recite the words and don't put in the time contemplating their meaning, then our old conceptions and prejudices will remain very strong. So within this thought that everybody wants happiness and nobody wants suffering, let's also recognize that they all have been kind to us and have contributed to our own happiness in one way or another, in one or another or many previous lifetimes. And so to open our hearts to let that in, and to open our hearts and allow us to respond with affection and care and compassion for others. And then based on that compassion, we generate the bodhicitta motivation to exert ourselves to actualize our full potential, so that we can most easily and effectively work for the benefit of all living beings. So in our practice, if we sometimes feel like our mind isn't moving, we need to actually ask ourselves, what am I doing in my meditation practice? Am I just reciting words, or am I actually thinking about the meaning and taking the time to really explore the meaning of even simple phrases like, may all sentient beings have happiness and its causes? Yeah. Am I just saying that, or am I taking the time to really think about what in the world that means and what that would look like and what I can do to contribute to it, and what is happiness and what are its causes? Okay? So if we feel that we're just stuck in all our own mental habits, we need to really ask ourselves, what are we doing in our meditation? Yeah. So that doesn't mean that we'll meditate on something and then it'll change forever and quickly and everything like that. But for sure, if we contemplate these different things again and again, there's going to be some shift. Whereas if we just say the words, probably not so much, not so effective, because our minds are actually, you all know the thing where you say the words, but your mind's thinking something else. Yeah? So you're saying, may all sentient beings have happiness and its causes, and your mind is thinking, the way these people treat me isn't fair. Yeah. So, are we really going to generate the feeling of love with that going on in our meditation? Yeah. No, we're going to generate the feeling of, resentment. This world isn't fair, and these people don't appreciate me, and and we build our whole legal case about why that idea is right. And then we sit in a prison of our own making. And this is what everybody does. And when you really think about it, it's so sad. Because people have this amazing potential and then use it and use their time to just stay stuck in stupid thoughts that make themselves miserable. Isn't it? Yeah, it's like that, huh? Okay, so I think we have some syllogisms that maybe your assignment was to try and justify some of your thoughts and behavior. So I'm glad you wrote it down. I haven't had a chance to read them. We can do a few. Shall I give you Venerable Jampa's? Yeah, she has some good ones here. And you can tell she's really, she said that this exercise is really helping her to look at her own thoughts and figure out what makes sense and what doesn't. She said, just thinking about my behavior and applying the syllogisms helps me to be aware of the destructiveness of how I'm thinking. I am getting more of a close experience realizing that I am wasting a lot of time holding on to certain emotions, behaviors, and interpretations. So that is a good conclusion to reach from this exercise. Okay, so first syllogism. Venerable Jampa has some anxiety about her possible return to the Abbey because she is someone who doesn't know how the community will react. Okay, you want the second one? Venerable Jampa distracts herself with reading the news or surfing the internet because she is someone who needs to relax her mind. Oh, that's not just Venerable Jampa's syllogism, I think. Few people like that one. Okay, why don't we start with that one, because that one got a response from people. Okay, what's the subject? Okay, predicate.
Distracts herself by reading news and surfing the internet.
Okay, the reason?
She needs something to relax her mind.
Okay, and what's the property of the subject?
Needs something to relax her mind.
Yeah, she is. It's better to say she is someone who needs to relax her mind. Okay, is that true? She's somebody who needs to relax her mind? Yeah, we all need to relax our mind. Okay, what's the pervasion? What's the pervasion? What?
It's necessarily the case that someone who needs to relax their mind will surf the news or read.
Yeah. Yeah, so the pervasion, if it's somebody who needs to relax their mind, then they will read the news and surf the internet.
No.
Yeah, or they have to. What did she say, have to? Did she say, or they will want to? What did she say in here? Second sentence. Because she needs to. So if it's somebody who needs to relax their mind, they will do it by by reading the news or surfing the internet.
They will distract themselves by reading the news and surfing.
Yeah. Okay, so what about that pervasion? No. Why isn't it true?
It often doesn't produce that effect for one thing. It often doesn't produce that effect for one thing, but also someone who needs to relax their mind won't necessarily do that.
Right. So somebody who needs their mind won't necessarily do that. Why? Because reading the news and surfing the internet doesn't distract your mind or relax your mind. It does distract your mind. It doesn't relax your mind. Okay? So that's a good example of something that we easily get hooked into that doesn't make much sense when we look at it. Okay. You want to go to one of the other ones somebody else did? We'll come back to her second one later. When we read the top one, because I'm at an angle, I can't see it.
Avoiding people I've had Avoiding people I have unpleasant interactions with in the past will bring happiness because it will prevent frustration and disappointment from arising.
Okay, what's the subject?
Avoiding people
I've had unpleasant interactions with in the past. Okay, predicate is
will bring happiness.
Will bring happiness. Reason?
Because it will prevent frustration and disappointment from arising.
Okay. Then what's the property?
Avoiding people I have unpleasant in the past will prevent frustration and disappointment from arising.
No way.
That doesn't work, does it? Yeah. Why not?
Disappointment and frustration are going to arise anyway, whether you count them or not.
Yeah. Okay. Because disappointment and frustration are going to arise anyway, whether you encounter those people or not. Okay. Why? Yeah, because it has to do with our own afflictions, doesn't it? Yeah. Then, so the property doesn't work. Then what about what's the pervasion?
Anything that prevents frustration and disappointment from arising will bring happiness. Will necessarily bring happiness.
Whatever presents, say it into the microphone, please, somebody.
Whatever will prevent frustration and disappointment from arising will necessarily bring happiness.
Is that true or not?
Yes.
No, why not?
Whatever will is kind of vague.
Whatever, yeah, why not?
It might prevent one form of frustration, but not all forms of frustration.
Yeah, it might prevent one form of unhappiness, but not all forms of unhappiness. Okay, because if it prevents disappointment, frustration, then it necessarily will lead to happiness, and we're saying that's not true. Yeah, because you could still be unhappy about something else. Okay. Oh, but that's one of our major strategies, isn't it? Let's avoid the people we don't like because we'll be happier if we don't have to interact with them. That's what we tell ourselves. And here we just realized that syllogism, the property doesn't work and the pervasion doesn't work either. Cuckoo. Yeah.
What's the different syllogism that you just posed? That we'll be happier if we avoid them.
Yeah, but because this is all about frustration and disappointment, but the simple syllogism that avoiding people that we've had unpleasant will be happier, will make us happier, might work.
You think avoiding the people that...
No, it's just harder to prove to myself.
Oh. Okay. No, because avoiding people doesn't make it... You can avoid the people that you have problems with, but your unhappiness still exists inside of yourself. Yeah.
And you'll find somebody else.
Right. And then you project...
The heart will expand.
Yep. Then you attribute your frustration and disappointment onto somebody else. And pretty soon you're left with you have to avoid everybody.
Your own mind. You have to avoid yourself.
Yeah. That's what it boils down to, doesn't it? We have to avoid what's going on inside here because it poisons everything else. Okay, what's the next one?
I agree with this one.
These are all truths, by the way.
Decisions made by ordinary minds are not 100% trustworthy because ordinary minds can be under the power of afflicted mental states and self-centered thinking.
Okay, so
The subject is decisions made by ordinary minds.
okay, what is an ordinary mind?
Non-Arya being?
Does that mean somebody who's not an Arya?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll take it to mean somebody who's not an Arya. Okay,
Predicate is are not 100% trustworthy.
okay,
And the reasoning is because ordinary non-Arya being minds can be under the power of afflicted mental states and self-centered thinking.
okay. Then the property?
Decisions made by ordinary non-Arya minds can be
Yeah, can be.
under the power of afflicted mental states and self-centered thinking.
Okay, so maybe or can be.
Can be.
Yeah,
It says
can
can
be,
be.
but it doesn't mean are.
Right.
It means they
Right.
may be.
So
Yeah,
that's
they can be. Okay, that's okay. Then the deprivation.
whatever is an ordinary non-Arya being mind under the power of afflicted mental states and self-centered thinking is necessarily not 100% trustworthy.
Is that true or not true? Not true. Why not?
There's some things you can trust.
Yeah, but not 100%.
You can't trust an inferential realization of emptiness? Isn't that 100% trustworthy?
Should be.
Uncontrived bodhicitta might fall in
Yeah.
that category.
Uncontrived bodhicitta,
Renunciation.
renunciation.
The subject would have to be clarified. When it's, because when it says decisions, does that mean all of the decisions aren't 100%, or one decision could be 100%?
Grammar is ambiguous.
Yeah, because if you're saying the decisions made by ordinary beings are not 100% trustworthy, does that mean not 100% of those decisions, or does that mean that there
No, I
are
think
no
that-
decisions in that group that are
I
100%?
think that's the latter meaning is what. I don't know who wrote this. Who wrote this? Okay.
Oh, I was just thinking about the key word is decisions there,
Uh-huh.
made by ordinary beings.
Okay. But if an ordinary being, even before they've entered the path of accumulation, makes the decision that, yes, things are empty of inherent existence, or yes, I must get out of cyclic existence, isn't that reliable?
Yes.
Okay. So the syllogism is wrong.
Oh, I know that.
Okay.
I knew it from the outset. There's no way that any of these are going to work.
Okay. Dennis?
But isn't it the case that until you have the direct experience of emptiness, you can still be convinced otherwise?
No.
No.
No. Once you have an inferential understanding, that is firm. That is a reliable cognizer.
Okay.
If you don't maintain it, then
It is still possible to slip back.
if you
But
don't,
the decision made based on an inferential cognizer
right?
is reliable.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering about, trying to come up with a good example. Here's what comes to mind. Like, say I know somebody who's afflicted, has a lot of afflicted mental states and self-centered thinking, but they're my realtor. and they've done all the research on a piece of land I want to buy.
Mm-hmm.
I can have 100% trustworthiness in a decision they might make.
Yeah. So if it's somebody who's an expert in a certain field, you're willing to give them 100% trust. Yeah.
In certain areas.
Yeah, and if they're an expert in that field and you're trusting them in that field. Yeah. Okay. And what's the next one? Oh. You have a problem?
No, it's just that it can even be a mundane mind, the decision to ordain. A person may be under the power of afflicted mental states and self-centered thinking, but is that a 100% trustworthy decision?
No.
You don't think so? By the time, then why would we
Because people they can change their mind, they can be wanting to ordain just out of emotion and fairy tale thinking.
Okay.
Just because it's it's a decision to do something virtuous, doesn't mean that the person's doing it for the right motivation.
No, the decision itself is virtuous.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean it's 100% trustworthy. Okay. Yeah. Next one.
Nima can drink decaf coffee
We're
because
still on
decaf
this.
coffee does not have a negative effect on her mind.
Okay, so subject? No, it's just Nima. Nima. Okay, predicate?
Can drink decaf coffee
Reason?
because decaf coffee does not have a negative effect on her mind.
Okay, what's the property?
Nima's coffee doesn't have a negative effect on her mind.
No,
No.
because the subject is Nima.
Yeah. Yes. Decaf coffee.
No, the reason has to be something about Nima.
Nima.
It can't just be some other reason. It has to be a property that applies to Nima.
Nima's mind is not negatively affected by decaf coffee.
Okay, so so write it. So what's the subject going to be? No, but if you need to rewrite it because there's no property of the subject.
Yeah, there's no property.
Yeah. So how are you going to rewrite it?
What it does is just her instead of Nima. It's the pronoun.
No, because the subject, the property has to be a quality of the subject, and drinking decaf coffee
Okay, so yeah.
has nothing to do with Nima. We have to relate it to Nima. Nima's mind, her mind drinks decaf coffee?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Nima is a person who can drink decaf coffee because Nima is a person who's not negatively affected by decaf coffee.
Yeah. Okay.
Nima the person.
No, the subject.
No, she's over there.
So Nima is a person. Nima is a person would be the subject.
Okay.
Who-
No,
Nima is a person who can.
Nima. No, that's not going to work. Because then your predicate's going to be is a person who can drink decaf coffee. Because she is a person who is not negatively influenced by the coffee. That would work. Okay. Nima is a person. What did you say?
Sorry. Nima is a person who can drink decaf coffee because her mind is not.
She is a person
because
whose
she's
mind.
a person whose mind is not negatively affected by decaf coffee.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
whose mind is not negatively affected by decaf coffee.
Doesn't help.
Okay, so Nima is a person who can drink decaf coffee because she is a person whose mind is not negatively negatively affected by decaf coffee, or by drinking decaf coffee. Yeah.
To be on the shelf.
Right. Okay, so now try it. Nima, what is the property? Nima?
Nima is a person whose mind is not negatively affected by drinking decaf coffee.
Okay, and the pervasion?
Pervasion is if it is not negatively affected by drinking decaf coffee.
If you're a person who is not,
whose mind is not negatively affected by drinking decaf coffee, then
you are necessarily
able to drink coffee.
You are necessarily able to drink decaf coffee. What? What? Okay, so what's wrong with that pervasion?
It's not even the pervasion. Nima is a person who is not negatively affected by drinking decaf coffee, but she drank decaf coffee like 10 days ago and still talking about it, so she's pretty negatively affected by it. And even if it was on the shelf and you were looking at it all the time, your mind would be negatively affected.
That's not a problem with the pervasion, that's a problem with the sign.
Yeah.
We've established that Nima is not a person. It's not true that Nima is a person who is not negatively affected.
Right. It's the problem of the property. Yeah. But the pervasion also doesn't work.
No, because someone with acid reflux cannot drink. It doesn't negatively affect their mind, but it negatively affects their digestion.
Yeah, never going to fit. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, Nima.
Well, just in case we were convinced that she couldn't do it, how about Sepple can drink Frappuccino because she was on vacation from the Abbey with her sister?
Okay. So we're going to have to, Sepple is a person who can drink. What's Frappuccino?
It's like, you know what a Slurpee is? Or
Yeah.
an icy drink?
Uh-huh.
They make it with coffee.
Oh.
And whipped cream on top. Very few calories. No calories.
Now you're really seeing what nuns meditate on. Oh, Maria Tara Sapariwari Frappuccino Partizalso. Oh, Maria Tara Sapariwari Decaf Coffee Partizalso. Yeah. Okay, so subject? Okay, subject? Simple. Okay, predicate?
There's a person who can drink Frappuccino.
Okay. So what does can drink mean? Allowed. So let's clarify that. Is allowed to drink. Or, yeah. Yeah. No, is someone justified in allowing herself?
What's this being not a nun when you leave? Your sister. Well, that's not big. Okay. How does she know? She is. That's right. You don't understand.
Okay. So, Sepal, what's the property?
Supple. I've lost it now. Because, Supple's a personal
Supple is a person who is on vacation from the Abbey with her sister. That holds.
That's okay. Then the pervasion.
Yes. Whoever is a person who is on vacation from the Abbey with her sister is justified in allowing herself to drink Frappuccino.
Now, I know everybody votes for that. However, oh. Okay. Yeah. So the privation doesn't hold. No.
And the part that's missing in both of these syllogisms is the fact that we voluntarily hold guidelines, whether we're at the Abbey or not.
Exactly.
And sometimes we slip.
Yep. That being away from the Abbey doesn't justify acting in a different way. In fact, that comes up in the ordination ceremony. You know, after you take the precepts, and the preceptor says, you know, remember to keep the precepts with no matter who you're with in all situations and wherever you are. So.
And that includes all the additional Abbey guidelines as well as precepts.
Yeah, I thought you could get out of that one, huh? Okay. Okay, next one.
I am right because I am smart.
Yes, that's clear.
Yeah. Okay, these short, sweet ones are good. Okay, so what the subject?
I
Predicate.
am right
Reason?
because I am smart.
Yeah, 'cause I'm someone who's smart. Okay, property?
I am smart.
Smart, of course. What does smart mean? What's the definition of smart?
Whatever I say is.
I think that's,
Hold on.
Huh?
if you're accepting this as a valid syllogism, then I think that's an
Microphone.
maybe you're not smart.
Yeah, right.
Well, it's as defined by me.
Yeah, okay, so first of all, we don't know what smart means. And he's saying if you make that syllogism and think it's reliable, it shows you're not smart. Okay, so something, it's too vague. Yeah, it's too vague. And then what's the pervasion?
Whoever's smart is necessarily right.
Is that true? No. Yeah, okay. Next one.
I enjoy driving because it allows me to feel free and in control.
We know who wrote that one. It's a dead giveaway. Okay, so this one needs to be, I am someone who enjoys driving because I'm a person, or I'm someone who.
Because a person who's driving allows to feel free and in control. Because I'm a person through the act of driving allows
Yeah.
me to feel free and in control.
Mm-hmm.
And the person that driving.
Some person for whom the act of driving.
For whom driving gives me.
It's not a valid syllogism, but it's true.
Okay, so what she's writing out, what's the subject? I. What's the predicate? Enjoy driving. Then what's the reason? See, there's a lot of big, long reason.
Because I'm a person who the act of driving gives me a sense of freedom and being in control.
Okay, then what's the property?
I am a person for whom the act of driving gives me a sense of freedom and being in control.
Always?
When I'm driving, yeah.
Really? In all traffic, all the time? Even when you have a stomach ache, even when you're sitting parked on the highway?
When you get slip on the ice and
Blizzard.
What? Yeah, in a blizzard or black ice.
And you want to be home asleep.
I've been stuck in traffic on 495 in LA. Don't give me that. I'm just having a ball.
Yeah. Yeah. So does the property hold?
Okay, maybe not 100%.
Okay. So something's wrong with the property. Then what's the privation?
I'm a person for whom the act of driving gives me a sense of freedom.
No. If you're a person
Whoever is a person for whom the act of driving gives a sense of freedom and being in control enjoys driving. Necessarily enjoys driving.
necessarily enjoys driving. Is that true?
There could be moments when you don't.
Yeah, there
Or
could.
you're driving somebody who is having a heart attack in the back of the seat or is very ill, and you're trying to get them to the emergency room as fast as possible to save their life.
I could be someone who dislikes feeling in control. I want everyone else to be in control.
Ah.
I don't like that. I don't like that responsibility.
Yeah. But here it's if it's a person who has a sense of freedom and control when they're driving, then they necessarily enjoy driving.
That's why I'm saying it's not a pervasion.
Yeah, but you're changing the reason.
No, he's just saying that just because you give.
No, the feeling of being free and in control
Uh-huh.
is not necessarily enjoyable.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, that's what you're saying. Okay. So the feeling of being of freedom and control isn't necessarily enjoyable. Yeah.
I'm the I there, not anybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah, but also that this is not a subject and a predicate we need to prove, right? As in, we know you enjoy driving. if it were driving is enjoyable, then we have a debate going. Because I hate driving, period.
Yeah.
So, for many reasons. So
Yeah. So So in a way, this is a syllogism that doesn't really prove much.
She's proved it to herself already.
Yeah. Okay. Next one.
I am flawed because everyone doesn't like me all the time.
Oh, you got me. Okay. What's the subject? Predicate.
I'm flawed.
Okay, I'm someone who is flawed. We don't need to write it all the time. Reason?
Because I am someone who everyone doesn't like all the time.
Yeah, so I'm someone who not everyone likes it all the time. Okay, property.
I'm someone who everyone doesn't like
All the time.
I'm someone who everyone doesn't like all the time. Well, that's true for all of us, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, then the provision.
What does flawed mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What does flawed mean?
That everybody doesn't like me all.
maybe it means inherently bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, or worthless. Okay. Then what's the privation?
Whoever everyone doesn't like all the time is necessarily flawed.
Okay. So what about the Buddha? Not everybody liked the Buddha all the time.
He was not flawed.
And even, what's the causal relationship between people not liking you all the time and being flawed? Is there a causal relationship between those two things?
No.
Yeah. Is there a relationship of, what did they call it, correspondence, that those two things happen together? No. So this one's fake news.
Person X is rude because he did not respond to my friendly greeting.
Okay, subject.
Person X.
Yeah.
The kid is rude.
Uh-huh.
Reason is he did not respond to my friendly greeting.
Okay. Property?
Person X did not respond to my friendly greeting.
No. And pervasion?
Whoever does not respond to my friendly greeting is necessarily rude.
Oh, now that's really true, isn't it? Definitely true. Even if he's having a heart attack. Yeah.
Or didn't hear the greeting at all.
Or he didn't hear the greeting. Or he's preoccupied.
Or maybe blind.
No, deaf.
Just a nod.
Yeah, okay, might be just a nod. Okay, so that one is Nick, yeah. That one doesn't work either. We thought we could get away with trying the person in a court of law with that one, but it doesn't work. Okay, then the other one from Venerable Jampa?
Venerable Jampa has some anxiety about her possible return to the Abbey because she is someone who doesn't know how the community will react.
Yeah. Why don't we reword it? Venerable Jampa is justified in having anxiety. Yeah. Do you want to do it like that?
Yeah, because she
Yeah.
has anxiety about many things.
Yeah. Oh, yes. You're talking about someone who doesn't have anxiety?
No.
Oh.
I recognize it in myself.
Oh.
I recognize it in others.
Okay.
I just say I trust
Okay, so just say,
Venerable Jampa is justified in being anxious about her possible return to the Abbey because she is someone who doesn't know how the community will react.
okay. So, subject, predicate,
Is justified in being anxious about her possible return to the Abbey.
and predicate, reason.
She is someone who doesn't know how the community will react.
Okay. Then property.
Venerable Jampa doesn't know how the community will react.
That's okay. Yeah. Then pervasion.
Whoever doesn't know how the community will react is necessarily justified in being anxious about their possible return to the Abbey.
Well, I'll tell you what Venerable Jampa wrote. Okay, she says, the pervasion does not hold. There are many visitors to the Abbey or residents coming back from a longer absence, but it does not mean that they will be anxious upon their visit or return because they don't know how the community will react towards them. They may just be joyful or grateful for having the opportunity to possibly visit or return. Okay. Also, this anxiety shows that you have some expectations on the other. Okay. How the community will react towards me. You wish they would be loving, forgiving, and so forth, but you also fear that this may not come true, and you are seen only with your faulty old behavior of the past. But even if others react in this or that way in memory of your past behavior, what counts is how stable one is in one's own mind. For example, instead of interpreting and reacting towards certain observations, and how I am able to apply the Dharma. It's all about practice. In other words, just because you don't know how everybody will respond when you return, that doesn't mean you have to be anxious about it. Yeah. Okay.
We have one more.
Oh, we have one more. Okay.
I have one too.
A lot of swear words have been removed from this one.
Oh. Okay.
A person is justified in feeling frustration when a bucket needed to wash the floor is missing, because looking for 45 minutes and not finding a bucket takes more time than mopping the floor.
And writing a syllogism takes more time than mopping the floor.
That floor is still pretty good.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so what's the subject?
A person
Okay. And predicate?
is justified in feeling frustration when a bucket needed to wash the floor is missing.
Okay. Okay, we're down to crucial international discussions here. Okay. And the reason?
Because looking for 45 minutes and not finding a bucket takes more time than mopping the floor.
Okay, now what's the property? Is this syllogism properly constructed?
No.
No.
A person is someone looking for 45 minutes and not finding a bucket. Nope.
No. You need to rewrite it somehow.
The person takes more time on the floor than they would looking 45 minutes. But no, other way around. Because a person
Microphone,
takes more
Jack.
time. Could you put the board?
No. Yeah. Yep. See if you can put the word up. And what, I mean, just, well, try and rewrite it first and see, because you may have to leave part of it off. Because what, how does taking more time to look for the bucket than mopping the floor justify
feeling frustrated.
Yeah, justify feeling frustrated.
I will write. Somebody else tell me what to write.
Okay, it's like this other one, like Nima. Okay, so see if you can do it. So a person who, yeah.
Can't find a bucket. If you love to wash floors.
Yeah. Yes, who wants to wash a floor, maybe. Yeah.
Needs to wash the floor.
Yeah, we're talking about a person who wants to who wants to wash the floor. No, wants to find. No, a person who who wants to mop the floor.
Joyfully.
Yes. Floor. Okay.
It's justified.
Yeah. It's justified in what? In feeling frustrated. Because
Can't find a bucket.
Because she is a person who
yeah, person.
Was she the person?
Person who can't find a bucket.
That's not gonna work.
Okay. So now, what's the Venerable Yeshe? What's the subject? No.
Who wants to joyfully mop the floor?
Okay, a person who joyfully wants to mop the floor. Predicate?
Okay, that's there. Is justified in feeling frustrated.
Okay. And reason?
Because she can't find the bucket.
Can't find the bucket. So what's the property?
A person who wants to joyfully mop the floor can't find the mop bucket. It happens every week. Every week? It should literally happen. I'm hiding it under my desk now. Look.
Really doesn't want to be off the mop.
Looked in your office for the mop because somebody wanted to mop the floor and I couldn't find a stone.
Why you so hard? And now you know why we don't mop floors. Come on, I never mopped the floor before I showed her until 3 months ago.
Oh. Was she? That's because she didn't have any decaf coffee. Okay. Okay, so what's the property? She's a person who wants to joyfully mop the floor is someone who can't find the mop bucket.
Okay.
What? No, that doesn't work. Just because somebody wants to floor doesn't mean that there's someone who can't find the bucket. Yeah, or the bucket. Okay, so yeah, right. So okay, so there's something wrong with the property. What's the privation? If you're someone who can't find the bucket, then you're necessarily justified in feeling frustrated. Actually, some people would feel happy because they can't find the bucket because then they don't have to mop the floor. Okay, so that one doesn't work either. Okay. Yeah.
Actually, the way it's originally written, not finding the bucket is part of the subject.
Yes.
So a person who wants to just joyfully mop the floor and can't find the bucket is the subject.
Yeah, then what's the reason?
Then you get into the 45 minutes and the comparison of time thing. That's the reason. Kind of hard to figure out how to word that.
Yeah. It gets pretty complicated, you know? But actually, it taking more time to look for the bucket than to mop the floor.
That's because you're assuming that to clean the floor, you need a mop and a bucket, and you really don't.
Yeah, but that's true.
Not every time.
Yeah, you can get down on your hands and knees with a rag. Yeah.
But wouldn't that person feel real frustrated?
Okay, so now we got to move on to something else. Okay. The other homework assignment about conceptualization, let's do that one tomorrow night. Okay. But continue to look at that, especially about the food, you know. So for the people who weren't here last week, when we, there's a difference between conceptualization and the conceptual mind that thinks about something and the directly perceiving mind, which knows something clearly and directly. Okay, so a good way to tell the difference between them is at your meal time, when you have the food in front of you, to think of how the food is going to taste and have a real conception in your mind of what that food is going to taste like. And then eat it and see if the direct experience of eating it corresponds with what you thought it would taste like. Yeah. And what we often find is that we think things are going to taste better than they actually do. Mm-hmm. And in the same way, when it's something we don't like, we tend to think it's going to be worse than it actually is when we experience it. But rather than me just saying this, it's very good to do that the assignment yourself and really see in your life, you know, like, what do I think this is going to be like versus how is it actually? And so start with actual sense perception. Yeah. What is it going to taste like? You know, what is the texture of this cup? Imagine what the cup is the texture is, and then rub your finger on it and see, you know, see what the difference is between the direct perception of rubbing your finger on it and the conception of what you think the texture is going to be. Okay? So we'll do that part tomorrow. And then there was a third part, wasn't there? What was the third part?
Being aware of what you're perceiving as you're walking around. Is it a fresh apprehension?
Yeah, right. So being aware when you're walking around, how often you see something and then it reminds you of something else. It triggers some memory. It triggers, you know, some hope or some fear or anxiety. So to see how, you know, there's just the direct perception. You know, maybe you're out in the garden and you see a wasp flying around. So, or you hear a buzz. And so hearing the buzz is the direct perceiver mind that's hearing the buzz. And then the mind goes, oh no, I'm going to get bit. And that's going to really hurt. You know? And then that takes over your mind. This Yankee Doodle Dandy. Yeah. And then that thought takes over your mind. Oh no, I'm going to get bitten. It's going to hurt. Yeah. And, you know, the difference between, or just how we're actually freshly hearing that sound of the buzz, but in our mind, we're not freshly hearing it because we're putting all this meaning on top of it and all this future prognosis of what's going to happen, yeah, which hasn't happened yet and may not even happen, and yet we get very anxious about it, okay? Or, you know, see how you see somebody, you see somebody's face, and then that person reminds you of somebody you don't like or somebody you do like, and then how you start conceptualizing about what that person is going to be like when all you did is see the color and shape of their face. Okay? So to spend some time in our own experience watching how it's often very hard just to see things. When Zen people talk about beginner's mind, I think this is what they mean. Beginner's mind. Oh, there's the buzz of an insect. That's all. Oh, there's the color and shape of someone's face. That's all. Instead of, oh, there's the color and shape of that person's face, and they remind me of somebody who beat me up when I was in 5th grade. And, now it's triggered a fear response because I was always getting bullied. And then we're off in Never Never Land, aren't we? Creating our own drama just by seeing somebody's face who is a stranger. Okay? So this is really very, very helpful to learn to discern between a directly perceiving mind and, a valid one. And, all the conceptualization that follows it. Yeah. And how, when you do this, the low rig, the mind and awareness teachings really become alive because you really see how they talk about your own mind. And we begin to see how we create so many of our own problems. In fact, all of them. Yeah. Okay. Then, last week, we started talking a little bit about this kind of jumping ahead. We started talking about the different kinds of cognizing minds, and a little bit of debate arose about them. So I just want to go through that very quickly, and then we'll come back to the text here. So we were we were talking about facsimile direct perceivers, because the question arose of if you a mind that to which the object appears but is not ascertained. Okay, so for example, you're talking to somebody and somebody walks by, but because you're talking to somebody and engaged in the conversation, you're not sure if somebody walked by or not. It was like there was something there, but you don't know who it was or if there was really somebody. Okay, so that one is the object appeared, the color and shape of the person, but it wasn't ascertained because you can't say for sure that somebody walked by. Okay, so the question came, is that mind still a direct perceiver with respect to the person who walked by but wasn't ascertained? So the answer to that, okay, Lottie Ritm, said, an awareness to which an object appears but is not ascertained is a type of direct perceiver set forth separately within the sevenfold division of awareness and knowers to emphasize that not all direct perceivers are minds which realize their objects. So that's a little bit, when it says it's set forth separately within the sevenfold division, does that mean that it's like a subdivision or another kind of classification of awarenesses to which an object appears but is not ascertained?
I think it's just one of the seven, just like a subsequent cognizance.
Okay, because it said is set forth separately within the sevenfold division.
Well, set forth separately, because
yeah, it's just the wording is a bit confused. I know from another text that, yes, it is considered a direct perceiver, but it's just that wording I find confusing. Okay, so we also have a quote here. Where was it? An illustration of a mental direct perceiver, which is an inattentive perceiver, in other words, to which the object appears but is not ascertained, is a mental direct perceiver apprehending form in the continuum of an ordinary being. That's because this school says that after you have a series of moments of directly apprehending a sense object, then there's a very small moment of mental direct perception. And that is an inattentive mind. The object appears but is not ascertained. Okay. Common focus between direct perceiver and inattentive perceivers. One illustration. Okay, an illustration of a sense direct perceiver, which is an inattentive perceiver, is a sense direct perceiver apprehending blue that induces the doubt, did I see blue or not? Okay, so it is those inattentive perceivers are a type of direct perceiver. Okay. Now, somebody also sent the quotation. In this regard, the collected topics logicians note that whereas a direct perceiver is necessarily a consciousness to which a specifically characterized phenomena appears, in other words, to which a specifically characterized phenomena is equivalent to impermanent phenomena. Okay? So a direct perceiver is necessarily a consciousness to which a specifically characterized phenomena appears, together with all of its uncommon characteristics. Yeah. So an example of that is you see you hear the sound of the bell, and together with that is all the other characteristics of the sound. For example, its impermanence, its subtle impermanence, that appears to that ear consciousness, but it's not ascertained. Okay? So that kind of mind, it does not necessarily ascertain those characteristics. For instance, a directly perceiving eye consciousness apprehending blue is a non-mistaken knower correctly ascertaining the color which appears to it, but it does not ascertain those characteristics such as subtle impermanence. So it's a correct direct perceiver regarding blue, okay, but it is not a correct direct perceiver regarding the impermanence of blue, because the impermanence of blue is an object that appears but is not ascertained. Okay, so that solves our question from last week. Then let me just go through, because this is an interesting thing. This speaks of this homework assignment that we'll talk about tomorrow, about seeing things and then conceptualizing about them. So there's this category called facsimile direct perceivers. So these are things that we may think are direct perceivers, or they may seem to us in our experience that they are, but they're not. They're fake. Okay. So the first one, there's 7 kinds. One is a mistaken conception. Okay, so a conception apprehending sound to be impermanent. We may think, oh, that is a direct perceiver of the permanence of sound. Okay, so what's wrong with thinking of the misconception that apprehends sound to be permanent? No, sound to be permanent. Oh, I said it means it should be permanent. Didn't you know that? What's written on the paper here? Yeah, just because I said impermanent, you shouldn't. You know, I'm a person who, has an ordinary mind, so what I say isn't always reliable. So you should know when it's not reliable, and just because I said impermanent, you should know it means permanent. Okay, that's because I am right because I am smart. Okay, so why would a mistaken conception, like a conception that thinks sound is permanent, what's wrong with considering that a direct perceiver?
That is not.
It's wrong.
It's a conceptual consciousness, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Now, if we were saying, this is just facsimile direct perceiver, if we were to say a facsimile direct reliable perceiver, then it would be two reasons why it wasn't that. What are the two reasons?
Conceptual, so it's not direct, and wrong, so it's not reliable.
Right. Okay. Because it's a conception, so it's not direct, and also that conception is wrong because sound isn't permanent, and so the whole thing is unreliable. Okay. Then the second type of facsimile direct perceiver is a conventional conception. So an inferential realization that sound is impermanent. Okay, so you're in your meditation and you have this very strong inferential assertion that sound is impermanent, and it really blows you away thinking about it. What's wrong with considering that a direct perceiver? It's a conceptual mind. Okay. Then the third one is an inferential conception. Okay, so this is the mind apprehending a reason. That is, it realizes the three criteria in the proof of sound as impermanent, and is about to realize that sound is impermanent, but it's not an actual inference. But still, it doesn't matter because it's a conceptual mind. Okay, then the fourth one is a conception arising from inference. For example, a memory induced by inference. What's wrong with that one being a direct perceiver? It's also conceptual. Okay, but can you see how easy it would be to, if you're not paying attention, to think these kinds of things are actually direct perceivers? Okay, the fifth one is memory. So you're remembering something of the past. When you're in meditation and you remember something that happened to you before, does it seem like a direct perceiver to you? Do you feel like you're actually in that situation, again, hearing that person's voice saying either I love you or I hate you, depending on the situation? Yeah? It kind of feels like it's happening all over again. Okay? It's a memory. But why isn't that a direct perceiver?
It's not existing.
It's what?
It's not existing anywhere in the present moment for direct perception.
The object that's being perceived is not existing in front of you at that moment. It's not directly perceived by one of your sense consciousnesses. Okay? So this is also very helpful to remember in your meditation when you have a distraction about something that happened in the past, and all this emotion comes up, involving what you're remembering, and the situation feels so real, either that the person says, I love you dearly, and you feel like it's happening all over, or they say, I can't stand your guts, and you feel like it's happening all over. And it's just a conceptual mind. That person's not there. They're not saying it. Yeah. We're saying it to ourselves. Yeah.
I think that's particularly important because at least I have a tendency to think of memory as being just as reliable. Even I've actually caught myself on some false memories, genuine false memories that I picked up in childhood. But later went to the same place and that thing never existed.
Yeah. Yeah. You can have totally false memories that really influence you. We had one young man come here, and he remembered something with, what was it? He didn't rescue another child who was in trouble, and that child died or something like that. And then he was holding this over his head for years and years. Do you remember that? And then he asked his mother one day, did this happen? And she said no. And there it was, 2.5 decades of holding over his own head that he had been negligent, and this thing had never even happened. Yeah? Okay, then a wishing conception is the 6th. So it's a wish for something in the future. You're visualizing your next Frappuccino. Okay. Okay, so what's wrong with that being a direct perceiver? It's again conceptual. Okay, then the 7th one is dimness of sight. So cataracts, like me. Okay, actually, the ophthalmologist said that I lost 2 lines of vision since she last saw me, which was less than a year ago.
What does that mean?
You know, when you're reading the chart and they go smaller. So, yeah. So I need I'm doing the cataract surgery. So, so dimness of sight. So why isn't that a direct perceiver?
It's a wrong consciousness. Erroneous.
Yeah, it's non-conceptual, okay, but what you're perceiving is quite distorted.
It's a wrong sense direct perceiving.
Yeah.
It's not a reliable.
Yeah, it's a wrong sense direct perceiver. So it's interesting that a wrong sense direct perceiver is not considered a direct perceiver, but a consciousness in which the object appears but is not ascertained is considered a direct perceiver.
Yes, I read what you read there, and the one thing I did is I went back to the very beginning where it talks about direct perceivers, and to me, the way I understood that anyway was they seem to make it quite clear that it's the object of engagement that you're referring to, not the appearing object when you speak about a direct perceiver.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
well, in a direct perceiver,
what you actually comprehend,
yeah,
what you actually take, the object of engagement or the beheld object,
mm-hmm.
not the appear or
what
I don't
what
want to say
about
beheld
it?
object. Well, see, because remember when we did the whole snow mountain thing?
Yeah.
Okay, so they in that book later on in that same book they'll say actually there's not an answer for one of those at all, and they actually put it down to the separation between what is appearing and what is which would be like the appearing object, and then you know how there's 4 main ones and 2 are very similar.
Yeah, I think what you're saying in the case when you apprehend a white snow mountain as blue, the object, the focal object or the engaged, we call it the observed object, would be a white snow mountain, and the appearing object would be blue snow mountain.
No, the appearing object, well, I don't know. What I got from this is that you're actually, there's no object of engagement because it's erroneous. So it's not a direct perceiver. There's not one at all. And then when they go at the very beginning of the book, when they talk about what are direct perceivers, when they actually they make it sound like they're defining it, although the definition wasn't there, that it refers more to the object of engagement, not the appearing object.
Yeah. Okay, we'll come to that anyway. Yeah?
This one calls into question whether it's possible to have a sense direct perceiver at all. Because even when I had perfectly healthy 2010 teenage eyes, I didn't have perfect vision. There was still a limit to my...
Take that into account.
Yeah.
But there can be no such thing as perfect clarity in any of the senses.
Yeah, no, but here direct perceiver just means that you perceive like the color and shape of something. So that's all. You know, you see yellow. You see yellow as yellow. That's all it means. Yeah, it's not a. You don't have to have 20/20 vision or whatever it is. Yeah, I want to get back to this chapter, so this will be the last comment here.
So this is labeled dimness of sight, but this would probably apply to any of the senses, such as
Sure.
Okay, because
Yeah, it's just one example.
because I had a backache one time and I'd put ice on it,
Uh-huh.
and then it totally felt like the ice pack had broken. I had cold water running down my leg, but it wasn't. It was just a nerve,
Yeah. Yeah.
something like that.
Okay, let's get back here to the division of existence into specifically characterized phenomena and generally characterized phenomena. Okay? So, all impermanent phenomena are specifically characterized phenomena, and all permanent phenomena are generally characterized phenomena. Again, this division and these names showcase something about the type of consciousnesses that are able to perceive these phenomena, and in turn, they tell us the extent to which we can know these two types of existence. Okay, so he's bringing this in, the definition. Well, okay, a specifically characterized phenomena is defined as a phenomena that is established by way of its own character without being merely imputed by a term or a thought consciousness. Okay, so there it is telling us what kind of consciousness perceives specifically characterized phenomena. So it's a consciousness, that is not imputing a term or a thought consciousness and knowing the object by way of that. In other words, it's a direct perceiver. It's not a conceptual consciousness. Now, when it says here, without being merely imputed by a term or a thought consciousness, we go, I heard those words before. That's talking prasangika. No. It's, being imputed by a term or thought consciousness has different meanings in the different tenet systems. Okay? Here, what being imputed by a term or thought consciousness means is that in order to know the object, you have to actually see something else first. Okay? So a person, is, well, actually, that's not a good example because they do say a person is imputed by a term or a thought consciousness. But it's also an impermanent phenomena. And that has to do with imputed phenomena and substantial phenomena, which let's not get into that. Okay, let's take another example. Okay, so the color yellow. Yeah, if we have an eye consciousness knowing the color yellow, that consciousness is knowing the yellow without any imputation involved. There's the yellow and there's the consciousness. So the consciousness is a direct visual consciousness, okay? And the object is established by way of its own character, which means it has its own essence as whatever it is. Okay, so it's saying that all impermanent phenomena are established by their own character, and are not imputed by a term or a thought consciousness. Whereas according to Prasangika, all impermanent phenomena and all permanent phenomena, for that matter, do not exist by way of their own character, and They are merely imputed by term and thought consciousness. Okay? So let's go back to the Svatantrikas, what they're saying. Sautantrikas. This means that in this system, impermanent phenomena are asserted to be truly established phenomena. They exist from their own side without dependence on us to give them a name or think about them. When you turn your back, they are still there. Okay? That's because they have their own existence. Yeah. Remember that in this particular Buddhist tenet system, the Sutra school following reasoning, they assert truly existent external phenomena. This does not mean that they deny that impermanent phenomena are dependent arisings. Clearly, they are dependent arisings because they arise in dependence on cause and conditions. Okay, but what these lower schools don't realize is that if it's dependent on causes and conditions, it cannot exist by its own character. It cannot exist from its own side. So they don't understand the pervasion of the syllogism that says yellow is impermanent because it's a dependent arising. Because they don't realize that if it's a dependent arising, it must, yellow is empty of inherent existence, or yellow is empty of existing from its own side because it's a dependent arising. They don't realize that if it's a dependent arising, then it must be empty of existing from its own side. So they understand that it's a dependent arising. They understand that the subject is, the reason is the property of the subject, but they don't understand the pervasion. Do we need to write that up so you can see it? Okay, because this comes up a lot, so it's good. Okay. Now, let's go through and just test it to see if the syllogism works according to the Prasangika. Okay, subject, yellow. Predicate,
existing from its own side.
Okay, reason, okay, property,
Yellow is a dependent arising.
okay, that's good. Pervasion,
Anything that is a dependent arising is necessarily empty of existing from its own side.
okay, so Prasangikas say, great. Now, what's the problem with the lower schools? What don't they understand about that? They don't understand that if it's a dependent arising, it must be empty of existing from its own side. Okay, they agree that yellow is a dependent arising. So they agree with the property, but they don't agree with the pervasion. And in fact, they think that if it's a dependent arising, that means it exists, and if it exists, it must exist from its own side. That's the way they think. Yeah, because they can't tell the difference between existing and existing between and existing by from its own side, and they can't tell the difference between empty of existing from its own side and total non-existence. So there's those two things that they confuse, and that's why, they fall to the extreme of absolutism and nihilism. Yeah, because as soon as you get somebody who doesn't understand, like in this syllogism, who doesn't understand the pervasion, then some people will fall to absolutism and some people will fall to nihilism. Okay, because some people will say, but if it's a dependent arising, it must exist from its own side. And so they're falling to the extreme of absolutism. And then other people will say, if it is empty of existing from its own side, then it must be totally non-existent. And so they're falling to the extreme of nihilism. And what you find sometimes is that when you're arguing the prasangika view, that the opponents will go from one side to the other, some way, because you're trying to justify one of those positions. Because if you adhere to absolutism, then you're also going to adhere to nihilism and vice versa. Okay? Okay. Clearly, so we're talking back now about Sautrantrika. Clearly they are dependent arisings because they arise in dependence on causes and conditions. However, they don't exist as mere basis of names or only as objects of thought. Okay? This is certainly the way ordinary things appear to be. So this school is really basic. It's easier to understand because what they're saying corresponds a lot with our ordinary mind and how we see things, even though this ordinary mind is mistaken. I mean, when you look at your car or your phone or your beloved, they seem to exist from their own side, whether or not you designate them with a name or impute them by thought. See? So it's like that, isn't it? There's your car just sitting there waiting. It's a car. Everybody knows that. You don't have to impute anything to it. All you do is look at it and you see. Okay, so that's the way this system thinks, and that's why it's very attractive to some people. Okay, so there's your car just sitting there waiting for you to come along and perceive it. Impermanent phenomena are called specifically characterized because only impermanent phenomena appear together with all of their own individual and specific characteristics. We are not limited to seeing impermanent phenomena in a vague and general way, as we do when we're knowing something through conceptual mind. It's vague, it's general. Specifically characterized, we can see them directly, very clearly, and very specifically. If you just think pen, okay, so think pen. You get an image of pen. However, if you look at a pen somewhere, if you look at a pen in your hand, it appears completely and nakedly just as it exists. You can see every little detail. The plastic was scratched a little there. There's just a little ink left. It is red ink. It was made by Omnicorp and so on. Of course, that's very interesting if you ever need to identify your pen specifically. But the most important aspect of this full naked appearance is that the pen and every other impermanent phenomena shows its subtle impermanence. Okay? Remember the line of candles. Anybody remember the line of candles? Yeah, what was it? You remember?
Subtle impermanence, how it's like one going out and lighting the next one.
Oh, okay. Okay, so the image of one candle going out and lighting the next one, that one goes out and lighting the next one, as if all the moments are separate things, and so impermanence is just that. One goes out, the other one comes out and goes out. Yeah. Okay, so it's the flicker theory. Yeah, you're seeing reality like a movie, that there's these individual frames. Yeah. Okay. We went through this. You can see. Remember the line of candles. This is the fullness of its nature, and only a direct perceiver can perceive that full nature. So looking at your pen and you see everything about about that pen, including its subtle appearance, which is appearing but not ascertained. This is not the case for permanent phenomena, which must be known in a vague and general way by a thought consciousness, or designated in a general way by a term. Okay? So if I say tree, yeah, do you have an image of a tree? Yeah, now look outside and look at a tree. Okay, what's the difference between seeing something between that conceptual appearance and seeing it with your eyes looking at it?
Detail, it's much more detailed.
Yeah, it's much more detailed when you're seeing it, because you're seeing all the different leaves, you're seeing the leaves sway in the branch, you're seeing exactly how the twigs and the branches are. Yeah, whereas when you say tree, you have this kind of image of a tree, but it's kind of unclear. You know there are branches, you know there are leaves, but it could be you're visualizing it with needles too. Yeah?
Also the colors, you see all the subtlety of the color.
Right, you see the subtlety of the colors, that some of the green is very bright, some is duller. Okay, the same with the brown. Whereas, when you just think tree, it's not so clear. Keep in mind that however permanent phenomena come to be, they do not arise from causes and conditions, even when they are reckoned in relation to an impermanent basis that did arise from causes and conditions. The names of the permanent phenomena that exist for an occasion, remember those two kinds of impermanent phenomena? Permanent phenomena, the ones that exist for an occasion so that they only exist sometimes, and the ones that do not exist for an occasion, those are eternal. Okay? The names of the permanent phenomena that exist for an occasion and the qualities attributed to them go along with the names and qualities noted for their impermanent bases. Okay? For instance, the uncomposed space inside a plastic bottle is designated or named in relation to the impermanent bottle. And that space is known by a thought in relation to that bottle. Okay? As opposed to impermanent, specifically characterized phenomena, all permanent phenomena are generally characterized phenomena. Okay, a generally characterized phenomena is defined as a phenomena that is merely imputed by a term or thought consciousness and is not established as a specifically characterized phenomena. Okay? So it's merely imputed by a term and a thought consciousness, like, he is a jerk. Okay? Merely imputed. Generally characterized phenomena are not established by way of their own character. Yeah, why? Because they must be imputed by a thought consciousness or a term. Okay? For example, non-cow. So you can't see non-cow directly. You think non-cow by negating cow. Yeah, so that's what it was talking about here when the names of the permanent phenomena that exist for an occasion and the qualities attributed to them go along with the names and qualities noted for their impermanent basis. So cow, you know the qualities of cow, and then through that you know what is non-cow, even though cow is impermanent, non-cow is permanent. Okay? But everything that is non-cow is not necessarily permanent. For example, duck. Okay? Duck is a non-cow, but a duck is impermanent. Okay? So this does not mean that they do not exist, but that they are not established from their own side. So they exist by the force of our conceiving and giving them a label. Okay? So this is really a very good introduction for us to start thinking about, the difference between an object that is perceivable by a direct perceiver and one that is known by a conception. Because when we then move up to talk about the Chittamadrins, then they have this whole, they divide things into three natures, and one of the three natures is, everything that exists, or everything that is merely imputed. And so some of those things exist, some of them don't. Yeah, if you remember your Chittamadra. Okay, once again, whereas an impermanent phenomena such as a chair or a table might possibly be understood by thought, every permanent phenomena can only be understood by thought. It is essential to understand this point in the epistemology of this system, for it is such a prominent player in all that is going on. This system's description of impermanent things and permanent phenomena and the consciousnesses that have access to these existence may or may not be accurate, but the descriptions presented here, as well as in the other recommended sources, are accurate presentations of this system. So he's just saying, what this system says may not be completely accurate, but we're telling you, we're giving you an accurate description of what it says. But this is an accurate description of what the Galupas think that the Sautantrikas say, and that there was actually a group of Sautantrikas with a catechism that everybody agreed on. That part there's some doubt about, okay? Because in ancient India, they did have these labels, of all these different schools. But these people lived in one monastery together, and they debated, and some of the tenets they shared together, and some they were different. So, I don't think it was so clearly organized with when we read in the tenet books, what Sautantrikas follow, reasoning, believe, makes you a card-carrying Sautantrika. Okay? I don't think things were really as clearly laid out as it's made out to be, because making these systems kind of very clear with certain tenets is a very good pedagogical tool, because then you have a certain thing that everybody is examining together to see if it's true or not. Okay, so it doesn't really matter if all the people who called themselves Sautantrikas in ancient India actually believe that. For our purpose in studying it, it helps us to understand certain ideas and to refute other ideas. Okay, it's like with any category. Okay, if you say Sravasti Abbey monastic, okay, can you write down a catechism that every person who's a Sravasti Abbey monastic agrees to?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, we can't. Yeah. There's common beliefs, But is there a catechism where everybody believes in exactly the same things, and you have to believe that in order to be called a Sravasti Abbey monastic? No. Okay, so in that way you can see, looking back in ancient India, that, there's a, whenever you give labels to things, that, you can't clearly draw a circle around it. Yeah, you can define it and make it a concrete thing with your definition. But when it comes to practically looking at it, yeah. For example, okay, I'm going off on a tangent here. You all know that. But we say, okay, pot. So the definition of pot is flat bottom, bulbous based water holder. Okay? So that sounds very good. We have a definition of pot. We all know what pot is. But then we look at something. Okay, flat bottom, bulbous based, there's water in it. Flat bottom, bulbous based, no water. And if you put water in it, what would she say? Venerable Yeshe, if we put water in this, what would you say? Yeah, you say, please empty it. Yeah, but it's a possible water holder. If you walked into a room, would you call both of these pots? No. We wouldn't call either of them pots. But both of them fulfill the definition of a pot if you put water in this one. Or if you have the possibility of putting water in it. Okay? Or milk will do, or orange juice, or frappuccino, or decaf coffee. You want to drink your decaf out of this?
Starbucks.
Okay. So you can see there, we have a definition. We know what a pot is. But in real life, do you call that a pot? Sometimes they say, instead of that Tibetan term, translating it as pot, they translate it as jug. Or they can't translate it as vase. Would you call either of these a jug or a vase? Okay? So that's where we really say that when it comes to conception, things get really fuzzy. You think you know what it is, but conception, is fuzzy. Conventional truths are fuzzy. They're messy. We want to draw nice, things around them. Sravasti Abbey monastic, catechism. If you're a Sravasti Abbey monastic, you believe A, B, C, D. Yeah, it makes us feel secure. But in reality, okay? So there you can really see how grasping at inherent existence makes us crazy.
So the limitation you just described, would it apply to the system that we're studying, dividing things into impermanent and then permanent, or hidden and manifest? Because it's drawing lines around these.
So some of those things, like permanent and impermanent, generally we can agree on what's permanent and impermanent, but there are some things where there's some debate about it. Yeah, there's some things where some people say it's permanent, some people say it's not. I can't think of anything right now, but I know I've heard that before.
Yeah.
Huh? Generic, yeah. Conceptual appearances. Okay. Okay, so we have to stop. So we are stopping just after the definition of generally characterized. So we'll start with that definition next time.